مرحبا جميعا. معنا اليوم بروفيسور سيفا. He is an expert in marketing field. Prof. Sifa, he's the head of business school at University of Melbourne Technology. He is based in Melbourne, and he mainly focused on marketing in general, plus in social media studies as well. Prof. Sifa has a huge experience in different perspectives in marketing. He coordinated more than 30 PhD students from all over the world, from Saudi Arabia, from Asia, from Australia. Now I just would like to let him to introduce himself and talk more about his background. Welcome,
Okay.
Prof. Sifa.
All right. Very good evening to you all, and very good evening to you, Dr. Majda and team. I just want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to come and basically partake in this webinar. And just to give you a bit of my background, I'm actually Malaysian by birth, and I've been in Australia for the last 30 years. I've worked at 4 different public universities, and in my marketing is my forte. And I've got through to date about close to 30 doctoral students who have finished their PhD or Doctor of Business Administration. And I'm also proud to say that Dr. Majda was my doctoral candidate, and she did her PhD under my guidance and supervision, and I'm very proud of her. And that's basically a bit about myself. And also I've had a lot of industry experience here in Australia, consulting and also doing projects for various organizations in Australia, public sector and private sector. I suppose I don't want to elaborate and brag too much about myself, but I'd rather get to the webinar and talk more about what's on the webinar. Thanks, Dr. Majda.
You're welcome, Prof. Sifa. As you know, the main topic of the webinar today is about marketing research and its contribution to the AI. But before we reach AI stage, I would like to have more details about marketing research from the beginning, like from the traditional to the digital domain. I knew you have a large number of publications in different focus, either with your PhD or your own research paper. Plus, I do know that you work closely with marketing research companies. You have coordinate some project. If you can give us a background about this topic.
Okay, sure. Why not? I mean, just to give you all a bit of a background about market research, I think the important thing is marketing research is understanding the perceptions, the attitude, the behaviors of consumers, all right? And in terms of, it can be either B2C or B2B, all right? And here we're looking, when they say B2B, we're talking about business to business, or B2C, business to consumers. And let's look at it more from a consumer perspective. And the only way any organization can get to actually get their products or services out to the market is by understanding the needs and wants of a consumer. And those are the basic elements and the fundamentals of marketing. Now, to understand the needs and wants, we need to actually get into the customer's shoes and start walking around with them. And the only way we can do that is by researching them. And when I say researching, we're talking about, we need to understand who they are, where they are, and what they're coming from, all right? So to get this research done, there are a couple of ways. There are qualitative ways or quantitative ways of doing this. Okay, and just to get a better understanding of this, what has been happening in market research is there have been quite a few marketing research organizations who have actually just recycled questionnaires and literally carried out surveys without looking into the actual needs and wants from extensive research with the consumers. So these are some basic fundamentals of market research, which is actually being ignored by many researchers. All they do is they have a template and they just reuse the template for various researchers without actually doing anything specific for the consumer. all right, or specific for an organization. To give you an example, right now, say we're talking about COVID-19, and what are the elements that consumers would very much, want, all right? And if you look in terms of what consumers are going out there, there's a lot of things which are happening via online. The question is, how does the actual organization understand the perception of one, why would a consumer want something online? And what would trigger them to get into online purchase? Whether they have the infrastructure, the amenities, and these are the things that we got to look at. So it's not just going out there and flogging the goods or services to consumers, but it's more getting there to understand what consumers want. And I think to get that done, you have to carry out extensive research. The only way you can carry out research is by way of actually going there and getting a bit of external information about the consumers, and also getting an idea of the topic, okay? And these are some things which seems to be the main area. So when I say about topic, what we need to understand is we have to understand what really makes that particular product or service. We have to go back and read the literature. I mean, I'll give you a very simple example. I did a study, not a study, I was a consultant for a project in terms of carrying out study for Mercedes in Australia. So when Mercedes Australia conducted me as a consultant to carry this project, I had to actually go out and start from scratch the research. And the research has to be done right from the basics in terms of understanding first what they wanted. Their main concern was to identify why are customers not using their Mercedes service centers. So I had to actually do quite a lot of literature review on servicing and automobile servicing before I could go to actually conduct my first part of the research. And the first part of the research was very much qualitative. I had to conduct interviews. I had to conduct things like, focus groups. And to conduct these things, I have to myself understand the organization, I've got to understand the actual customers and the service. So I had to do an in-depth research review, find out a template which I could go there and ask them in terms of interviews first. And these interviews were conducted with the country service managers. And then after which I conducted focus groups. And then from focus groups, I did a questionnaire Australia-wide, which was actually on the web. So these are a few things that I can talk a bit about how research is and why it is important. So I hope I don't want to elaborate much more, Dr. Majda. Is there anything else you would like me to expand on, please?
Thank you, Prof. Seifa. It's really important a strategy we have to highlight nowadays. Working on customized models for marketing research is much more good, and it leads to better results for the organization rather than using used template. Once I get to this industry, I have realized this issue, and from my experience, we have run a project with a huge amount of fund based on customized survey or customized model, but we did not reach that important insight out of this project because this model has not been made specifically for their needs. I do understand this kind of a strategy. It takes time, but without this stage, they cannot go and reach what they are looking for. Some cases, for example, when we talk about customer satisfaction, general customer satisfaction, maybe the customized model it's work well. If we measure employee performance, like desk service employee performance, sometimes customized model is its work. But when we talk about an actual issue that you would like to solve in the business, for example, increase the sale, understand people behavior, launching a new product. In these cases, we really need to work hard to come up with fully customized marketing research strategy plus fully customized survey and model to measure our needs.
Very true, very true. And I think that's very true. I mean, I kind of just perused to some of the comments that someone said in terms of even with technology, we can't use templates. The important thing is that when, you know, the biggest misnomer, the biggest issue in market research is recycling templates. So if you go to an organization who carries out research, if they say that, okay, we can do your research, and they, you know, and they just come out with a standard questionnaire, which they use for previous research, and just tweak it a little bit, no doubt you'll get the results faster, but whether they are actually going to be useful is the question. Because there's a lot of money spent on market research. And I think the questions that people need to ask organizations who carry out this research, now tell me, you've got this list of questions, and they should actually go there and quiz the organization, ask them, why this question? Why? What sort of analysis would you get from this question? You know, why are you asking these questions? And I think this is what's missing. What happens is this: an organization gets a company to carry out the research, and all they do, leave it to them, and then they will come back with the results. But I think the problem is this: many organizations are not going there to see what the actual researcher is doing. And I think that is the gap which needs to be addressed. And I hope this webinar, in a way, addresses this gap of people wanting to be a lot more inquisitive, a lot more wanting to know, why am I carrying out this research, and not just give it to somebody and let them come back. There's got to be a constant interaction between the organization and the researcher, so that at every stage, and I still remember most of my consulting projects, at every stage, from the first stage of interviews, I had to go back and give feedback to the client. And then when I finished my focus group, I said, these were the findings of the focus group, and I gave feedback, a report to them and presented to them. And so it's got to be a continuum. And it's not just, you know, it's like giving somebody and just say, okay, now make this cake and give it to me. I don't care how you make it. So I hope you get to understand where I'm coming from, Dr. Majda.
Yeah, I got you, Prof. Seifa, and I have seen this. I mean, this fact during my work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's totally true, and I would believe that I think some organization, they need to have their own house work in terms of marketing research rather than giving everything to the vendor. Sometimes they cannot do that, so it's better to hire a direct consultant. Like.
That's right. And,
yeah.
And I think, yeah, sorry. Yeah, carry on, Dr. Majda, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, like going direct sometimes to the vendor without having a proper understanding of what exactly we need in terms of marketing research, sometimes it is missed their way. They will not be able to get what they want.
Exactly. And again, you see the other issue with market research and large organizations is they allocate budgets for this research, and they say we have to carry it out. But the biggest problem is following it through, because one is, if you just say, okay, I've got to get this research done, and if you don't follow it through, what's going to happen? You're not bothered about the results. Okay, you know what? Some organizations, so it's sad. They say, if you've got this budget, and again, I can tell you from my own experience, dealing with individuals, where they've got this budget, they say, we've got to carry out this research, and finally, what happens to the research? It stays in the shelf as a report, and they don't implement the research at all.
True.
It's very sad, because there's a lot of money spent, and this organization has carried out the research, but ultimately, the company who is actually contracted this research out is not going to look at the findings, because they say, so what? That's what they have found. All right. And I think that these are issues also with research.
Yeah, true, Prof. Seifa. I have realized that as well. And from my work, for example, what we have done in order to avoid this kind of action. So we have done something called action plan, a pre-action plan. And also we try to make sure that to develop a KPIs based on the output of every project that we did to make sure that it's an operation stage.
Fantastic.
Yes.
That's good.
And the main purpose of having like two different stage for action, a pre and after. A pre, which means that during making the research, so we get the employees to get familiar with the result, doing like workshop, introducing the results for them, make them understand more about the issues that we found. And after we finalize the study, usually we do the action plan workshop, and we train them on how to read the report and how to use this insight in the actual business. By doing that, honestly, we have reached really good feedback from like outside, like external and internal in the organization.
That's fantastic, Dr. Majda. I think, and that's what all organizations need to do. You see, they need to actually get really a bit. Now, someone asked, what is KPI? KPI is key performance indicators. That means you have put in place certain things that you have to achieve. Say we've got to achieve, a target of, say, $2 billion, $2 billion sales or whatever. So these are key performance indicators. That's what KPIs are. So I just saw a question flash up there. And would you want to maybe answer any questions from the audience at this stage, and then we can move on? Dr. Majda, are there any burning desires?
I'm trying to capture something.
Okay, but anyway, and I think as you're trying to capture, I'll just tell them, tell the audience that what we need to understand is exactly like what Dr. Majda said. The organizations contracting the research have to be equally involved with those actually doing the actual research. And I think that's a key element. And what happens is normally organizations wash their hands and say, you do the research, you just give us the findings. And I think this seems to be a bit of an issue in marketing research. And
yes, true, Sifa.
Carry on, Dr. Majda,
yeah.
please.
I want to ask the audience if they can write for us who they came from, where, like which industry and who they are. If they're a student, if they like have a business, so that we have like more like relevant contribution to them.
Sure, please.
If please you write for me. I just want to ask why organizations are still using old way, such as templates. I didn't get what. Yeah.
Okay, the reason why organizations are using templates is this, because I don't want to mention any names of market research companies because that's not fair. Because the only way, the easiest, and I should say it's like the fast food research for companies, if you have a research project, say in the food industry, they'll go back and look at some surveys they've carried out of the food industry and come out and say, okay, let's just use this questionnaire. Because number one, it's faster for them. Number two, it's cheaper. So they may charge you an arm and a leg. That means they're going to charge you a lot of money for the research, but at the same time, their costs are very much lower. So I think in appointing anyone to carry out any research, I think there's going to be a detailed breakdown of the time element and what is the actual work entail. So that's why companies use templates, because it's easier and cheaper for them. Carry on, Dr. Majda.
Okay, I had really good question. Someone asked if the marketing research is still younger in business, is like an early stage. It's a really good question.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the reason why market research is very much in the early stages in certain markets is because one is they have not really gone to actually identify the consumer's needs and wants. And again, this is where we go back to elements of the basic fundamentals of marketing. What is marketing? The core concepts in marketing talk about understanding customers' needs and wants. And this is not actually addressed because companies sometimes feel that they want to put themselves in the shoes of the consumers and feel that is exactly what they need. And that is why they've not actually gone to research, because before anything is out, one needs to carry out a research, like what Dr. Majda said, is pre-market research. What are the elements involved? And then next go on to the actual research, and then identify an organization that's going to carry out the research. And in identifying the organization, I think the key element here is this. We need to find out their background, what sort of research they've carried out, what industry, and also in terms of their referrals from other organizations. Huh? Okay, anything else, Dr. Majda?
Um, I think there is a question. Okay, they would like to make sure that how to make sure that the output of marketing research is it neutral and it has not been customized to make it like, yeah, really good question.
Very good. So the only way you can do that is actually when you appoint an organization, you need to first find out what is their basis of the questionnaire. What is the basis of the survey instrument that they're carrying out? Okay. Now, have they actually come out with the instrument because of something that they did before, or have they got certain evidence? They've got this literature, this background, and so I think that needs to be the important thing. So you need to go and get more details from them, and I think it should be something which is totally broken away from the organization. It's got to be close interaction, and that's what's going to happen. All right.
Yeah. And I think, Prof. Seifa, this kind of, I mean, in a marketing research domain, it's need a lot of quality assurance check all the way from the beginning to the end of the yeah, to make sure that we capture the neutral action of our participants. Yes.
That's true. And then again, like I think the important thing is having something neutral and not biased is a key element, because one is you don't want things to be written in a biased format. And you can see this from the actual results. You can see the results as to how they are, whether they are biased. And this is where I think doing the actual research is one. The other is the statistics part of it. And I think the statistics part of it is important, because that is why I said earlier, when you go to the actual company and say, now, can I see your list of questions that you're going to ask for the survey? Number one, okay, what is the basis of these questions? Number two, and number three, can you also tell me what analysis are you going to get from the first two questions, and why are you asking those people those questions? So your involvement, then they can say, okay, we want to find out. And this is where I think the party actually administering the research need to have a good background of statistics. In statistics here, we're talking about descriptive and inferential statistics. All right?
Yes.
And descriptive is more describing what the sample is saying. But I think as researchers, what we are very much dependent on is inferential. And inferential is what can we infer from the actual publics in terms of certain statistical tests that are carried out. Huh? And I'll be happy to dwell on the tests if anyone needs to know, because that talks about trying to find out certain differences between audiences and these kind of things. Huh?
Yeah. Great, thank you, Prof. Seifa.
Sure.
It's clear. Okay, I wanna, because I have been always asked this question, how it's important to have a marketing research stage in any business. Because, like, for example, I have been in cases where a business are developing a new product and they would like to go to the market without using marketing research to taste this product before go to the market, for example. Mm-hmm. They would like to skip this part and go to the market straight away. Mm-hmm. I have always been asking this question. So yeah, can you just let us know why we need marketing research?
Okay, now I think the important thing is this: market research needs to actually start from even the product. When you're talking about an organization where you're talking about how a product is conceived, even prior to the product being actually out in the factory or in the plant to be manufactured, they need to get an idea of what are the things that actually the consumer requires in terms of the actual product. So there's pre-launch survey. That means they actually get an idea of what are the ingredients. This is where we're talking about market research, working with the product, development process, how are new products developed. All right, that's the initial stage. Now the next stage is having, if you go and bring a product or service out of the market without having carried out any research, it's like actually shooting in the dark. That means it's like, you're basically going there and you're just hoping for something to happen without understanding the conditions of the consumer, the conditions of the market, the customer. So we have to understand what someone asked, why do we need to know about consumer behavior? Consumer behavior is very important. I mean, let me take an example now. All of you all have attended this webinar.
Yes.
As a presenter, I may want to know what actually brings you to the seminar. What brings you to this webinar is something that actually needs to be addressed. Now, some of you may want to gain knowledge. Some of you may want to understand market research better. Some may want to actually just see what it's all about. So this is where we're talking about. I've taken all the members who are in this particular webinar and broken them into groups and segments. So that is what market research does. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is it's important to understand before you take out anything. Like, I knew I was going to address this audience. So I had to make sure that whatever I'm addressing is in line with your needs and wants, because your guys are spending your time listening to me and Dr. Majda. Huh? All right, carry on, Dr. Majda, please.
Yeah. Bro Seifa, I have now, I have really good question. He said is why still marketing research depend on survey?
Okay, now there are a couple of ways. One is this: if you're going to be doing qualitative survey, that means qualitative research, that means you're going to go there and interview people. You're going to go there and do focus groups. Now, before you go out there and do any research, you need to have some information on what you're going to ask. Now, the basis of that information can be two forms. If I'm going to now come out there and carry out this research, I get a sort of a list of questions done, and these are open-ended questions. So I'm going to ask you why, who is this, what is happening, and what is the reason for buying this. Those are open-ended questions, and I can ask you in an interview or in a focus group. I have said 8 people, and I ask each one of you what it is and makes sense. However, when we go into a larger audience, say the sample size increases, it's impossible to go and interview everybody. So what we need to do is we need to design a questionnaire. Design a questionnaire which the relevant questions for people to actually, and this questionnaire becomes a survey which is more than often now done on the web. Or in fact, even you can have it on your mobile phone where you can actually fill out details. So that is why we need to actually have these surveys. Without the survey or the research instrument, the questionnaire, it's going to be very difficult for us to actually know all the details to be captured for purposes of that research. Okay?
Yeah, thank you, Bro Seifa. I think this question will lead us to my next question. What is the most popular tools that we use in marketing research? Like we use like interview and to conduct data.
Okay, now we in terms of tools here, we're talking about the research instrument or the actual questionnaire. And the questionnaire can be done a couple of ways. One is this, where we are actually going to get them to fill it online, and then from the way it's actually filled online, it's linked to a data file where the data is collected and then analyzed. Okay. Now there are also other methods of doing these things which sometimes involve things like where we're talking about in terms of this topic here in relation to AI. AI is artificial intelligence. Okay.
Yes.
Now artificial intelligence is more an element of taking these questions or the analysis of this and making sense of it in terms of predetermined solutions. And that is what we're talking about. That's the next stage of market research. Now, and to give you an example, I mean, let's take this particular phone that we have. Now what's happening? That phone there is capturing so much of data. And that data is sitting out somewhere in the cloud. And that data can be used for research by actually downloading it and making sense and also making inferences. All right? Carry on, Dr. Majda.
Yeah. Thank you, Prof. Siva. Can you just let me know a little bit about the contribution of marketing research in terms of digital domain? Like in terms of, because you know nowadays the number of users in digital domain is massively increased. For example, in social media, in blogs, in different platforms. So how it's important to use marketing research in this domain?
Yeah, I think the important thing is this: we've got various social media platforms. Okay, now the question is, how are we going to utilize them? And again, what we need to understand is, you know, all these particular platforms that we're talking about are also accumulating data. All right. I mean, for instance, take one Facebook, take Twitter, take all the different kinds of platforms. You know, as and when you get somebody filling out their details, if you notice, these particular platforms are actually following you through your journey in terms of what you buy, how you buy it, and this information is captured in the form of cookies. So as soon as you go to any particular, you know, say site, that cookie is following you. And sometimes, if you talk from a privacy perspective, this is not ethical, but some organizations do that. And again, I think there's a very thin line between ethics and market research. All right.
Yeah.
How far can you actually intrude or be intrusive in terms of an individual? And I think this is where I think organizations and also individuals must sometimes be very cautious of their own rights. You know, okay, now when you sign up, the question is this: how many of you, before you actually get an app onto your mobile, actually go there and read all the fine lines before saying, I accept? I doubt. Because what is going to happen is, for instance, these social media platforms, when you say, I accepted, that means you have accepted all their terms of references. That is why when you're on these social media platforms, all the data they capture is what they own. All right. And so sometimes you may have to be a bit cautious and see what is there. Am I really going to be divulging a lot of my personal self? All right.
Yeah.
And again, this is where we as individuals got to be very cautious. Okay. So this is how companies like Facebook make money. All right. Because what they're doing is they are selling your data to other organizations. Let's assume now you're going to buy, you know, an automobile company wants to come out with, say, a driverless car. All right. So what it's done is capturing all this data from their various, I could say 1 billion followers or 1 billion members, and trying to now tell, okay, this organization, I'll give you this. All right. And I'm sure you're the major case in terms of Analytica. All right.
Yeah.
So these are a few things that you got to be cautious of platforms. All right. I hope I've kind of added a bit of your question, Dr. Majda.
Yes, Prof. Sifa. I have seen a few questions came to you, but I would keep them at the end of the webinar.
Sure.
Because I want to talk more in details in terms of marketing research and digital domain. I realized that once the marketing research get into the digital domain, the industry who are interested in marketing research is increased. For example, we have some organization from politics that what not you using the marketing research. I mean, before, even like if we can say 10 years ago, there is no politician used that much of marketing research. But within the increase of digital domain, I think they are the most demanded.
That's
for
right.
marketing research, to understand more about the public behavioral change, to understand more public feedback about the new changes in the country. And honestly, I have been work on so many projects where focusing on these topics. It's focusing on like the country and public domain more than the business sector that we use to focus more in marketing research.
That's right. Now, carry on. Sorry.
On top of that, we have seen other industry as well become more interested in marketing research. For example, entertainment and gaming, because it's big market for them to use the digital domain. So and this industry were not interested at all. Like I can assume, for example, 10 years ago.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, if you can talk more about this kind of a new industry who became interested in marketing research because of the increase of user in digital domain.
Yeah, okay. I mean, just to give you an example, you're talking about gaming, all right? And gaming and and gamification are these things that are happening in the area of digital arena, all right? Now, again, the question is this. Let's take, say, the gaming industry. Their idea is to innovate and to improve the gaming elements, and how can they actually do this without understanding what is happening outside to the actual users? So the only way they can do that is to keep tracking. And again, this is where we're talking about even things like retina and eye pupil attention. So there are devices that are being used to actually look at people's attention and how they are in terms of the pupil movement, whether my eyes are getting bigger, smaller, and these are the things which are being captured. And as they are being captured, these particular elements are actually being, looked at and said, okay, why are they so excited about this? So here we're talking about using not only just the questionnaires, but using the person's computer and their camera to identify their patterns of behavior.
Yeah, true, Seifa. Yes, it's true. Yes, I have been working closely with people who specialize in this field, and they have like lab developed especially to understand customer motivation out of the screen used.
That's right.
Yes.
I mean, you talk about there's so many sort of games out there where people use mental relaxation for other things. So the question is, it's like, how do you know what really excites them, what makes them trigger, is again things which are done without actually people wanting to fill out any forms, but more in terms of capturing information, capturing screenshots, right?
Yeah.
And having the screenshots actually dictate the actual motion and start. So screenshots become like actually the raw data, which is used to actually go to the next stage and then identifying what are the things that need to be done to innovate and improve the product or service. Yes.
Yeah.
Carry on, Dr.
Yeah, Prof. Seifa, this topic led us to another question, which is even the type of data in marketing research field has been changed, because previously we just collect text. Now we collect text, we collect picture. Nowadays, some of the emoji as well to understand people behavior.
That's right.
So this shows us how the digital domain has really huge influence on marketing research.
That's right. I mean, why go far, Dr. Majda? Your PhD was based on ethnography. You know what I mean?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, what is ethnography? We're talking about actually using a tool of research in relation to how the various websites have actually collected a lot of information, and that information is really digressed and churned into some form of material that can be used for future research. So what we're doing is we're serving the web, and again, that is another form of research, And the other thing that we're talking about is I alluded earlier about descriptive and inferential. Now, inferential is what I'm actually trying to get an idea of what the people are thinking about. And there's another third kind of domain, which is called extrapolation research. That means this is where we use statistical softwares to extrapolate in terms of from a small sample to a larger sample of say 5,000. And that is where we're talking, we use more aspects of things called structured equation modeling, or sometimes we use partial least squares to get this out. So this is where we've got to look at organizations again. I'll come back to this part. Hope you don't mind. Is this part that you have to understand, is the company carrying out the research only providing you basic descriptive studies or research, descriptive analysis? That means, are they just getting you excited with bar charts and pie charts and colorful three-dimensional? That one anyone can do. But the question is, looking beyond the basic descriptive statistics is what you want market researchers to do. This is what market researchers need to do. To tell me, what have you got from the data that tells me about the consumer? Don't tell me there were 50%, 30% males, 40, 70% females, and they were this income. We know all that, but we want to know more. We want to know more because you know why? You tell us by making this sample as equal to the population, what do you see? That's where we're talking about a bit more advanced statistics, to project into the wider population. And so this is what you got to make sure you get your organizations who are carrying out the research. If they're going to write the report, tell us, what are you going to provide in the report? They're going to say, okay, we're just going to give you some basic information of who your audience are, what they're doing. We don't want that. We want beyond that. And this is where we're talking about taking advantage of the various packages that actually do the statistical analysis. And they should be able to, if they do not understand those terms, we're talking about simple things. Independent sample t-test, one way or another, correlation. We're talking about, drawing some form of a model with dependent, independent, and mediating. And if your research company does not know those things, please tell them you want to go to somebody else.
Yeah.
All right. And that's what I would like to say. Carry on, Dr. Majja. Sorry if I went out of the track. Yeah.
No, it's really great contribution, Prof. Seifa. And this has led me to another question. How it's important for marketing research to work closely with statistical science and technical specialist. Because sometimes, sometimes they don't have the background of interpreting customer behavior. So sometimes they misusing the data. It's not just about the number, it's about the meaning of these numbers.
Exactly. Very good. This is fantastic. This is what's going to happen. You see, statistics and research is like pen and ink. It flows together.
Yes.
Right? You cannot have a pen without the ink. Okay?
Yeah.
The pen is the survey. Statistics is the ink that actually provides that final report. All right?
Yeah.
And when we talk about statistics, you've got to actually ask, your actual people who are carrying out the research, what kind of statistics do you know? And again, this is when you get to understand a bit more of their background in terms of your area of research. And I think it is essential for the organization actually contracting the research to have someone in the organization there who knows a bit of statistics. At the same time, the party to whom you're actually contracting to must be quizzed and ask questions from a statistical. If they do not and they cannot understand and answer the statistical questions in your first stage of appointing them for a project, then I think you may want to look for another organization to carry on. Yeah, please carry on. I think we've got another 15 minutes.
Yes, I think. Time. Yeah. Nowadays we have here AI in everything. And I do know that marketing research, one of the main elements of the AI, because without marketing research, we cannot use the data and we cannot teach the machine how to read the data in a correct way. Yes, because depending on a technical mind, sometimes it will not give us good insight out of this machine learning or deep learning. So we need someone from marketing research to help them how to make the data cluster, how to make the theme of the data, how to improve the data source, to read the data every day to make sure that it's make a sense and will help the company to reach valuable insight.
Yes, very true. And I think this is important. I mean, if you're talking about, artificial intelligence and also looking in terms of data mining, talking about big data, all these things are essential because what is happening as we are doing things, data is being captured. But the question is, now, I don't know whether you've heard this term called GIGO, that means garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
But the question is, how much of data do you have? All right.
Mm-hmm.
And are you collecting the right data? All right. You can have all the data, but the question is, are you collecting the right data? And that is essential because that data will go via artificial intelligence to actually come out with other things which will give you a broader idea. And I think the new domain is to work with aspects and understand how data is actually used in areas of artificial intelligence. Here we're talking about, to give you an example, in finance, there are things like robo-advisors, all right?
Yeah.
Where they capture your data and they say, okay, now from your actual behavior, the way you're doing, we would advise you to do these things. What is happening? Because you're using all the data they have collected, not only from you, from also the others, to understand what is happening and come out with suggestions and conclusions. All right. And that's another domain altogether. All right. And I think the important thing is to keep a track of those areas too. Is essential. Yes.
Yeah, true, Prof. Sifa. I have worked with, this is not artificial intelligence, but a BI domain, business intelligence. And I worked with the team. And by the time the team had so many, like a huge amount of data, but they didn't have the capability to translate this data to strategy.
Okay.
And to understand the actual behavior of the users.
Very true. In fact, I mean, I was just going through the actual chats and someone asked a very good question. I want to ask what depends on artificial intelligence, what are the technologies used for it and its relations with IoT. Now, just to give you an idea, Internet of Things is the way things are moving now. All right?
Yes.
You're talking about anything that we do, right from the basic toothbrush that we use to brush our teeth, to going to like even having a shower is Internet of Things. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is where we're talking about how AI works with IoT. All right.
Yeah.
And I think this is an area which is growing. And again, I'm sure even in your region, there's a lot of things in terms of how Internet of Things. I mean, the fact that from your home you can actually switch on your air conditioner and actually what's happening there, and that's mainly IoT. And now and I think again the thing about IoT and AI is actually the next dimension of market research. We're talking about how the data is being captured, okay, and again how it's being analyzed and got through. Now there's another question here I'm just looking at. What do we have to do for preparing before doing focus groups? Now, if you don't mind, I'll answer that. Can I do that?
Yes, Prof. Sifa, definitely.
Yes. Yeah. Now, the question about focus group. What are focus groups? Focus groups are small, a group of individuals, not more than about, say, 8 to 10 people, the maximum. You don't want to have too many people in the focus group. Now, how do you prepare? Number one, you got to identify the participants of the focus group. And those participants are representative of the wider audience. Number two, you got to make sure that you have actually a well-balanced sort of people in the focus group. You don't want it to be, totally all one particular left wing or right wing. You want to make sure, there's a balance of, like age groups, there's a balance of gender and, these kind of things. And the next key important thing is preparing a sort of a template. Like what questions are you going to be asking this focus group? And the other thing is this, in a focus group, you go there and you got to have somebody who's going to moderate the focus group. Like give you an example, Dr. Majda is asking me those questions. as Dr. Majda is asking me this question, someone on the other side is watching the observation of the participants in the focus group and making notes of that. And at the same time, by doing that, they are capturing the data so that it can be written in a form of a report. So these are some things that maybe I just thought I'll share with you all. I'm just trying to see if there's any other questions. I would like to ask, how can I do research when I'm still younger in business and books and course? I think one is through, getting to understand what is happening outside there and get to read more about these areas. Huh? All right. You took market research only. How do you look at artificial intelligence domains? Now, artificial intelligence domain is an area which is, basically talking about machines understanding how we operate. And for the machines to understand how we operate, it needs to have certain elements of human interaction too. All right. And this is where we're talking about how these particular things are predicting and telling what needs to be done. All right. And I think that AI part of it is sometimes, you want to make sure that I don't want to go too heavy into AI for the audience, because some may not be AI savvy. And at the same time, you don't want to throw terms and terminologies that may lose the audience. Okay. The other one is data analytics, dealing with big data. Yes, very much so. And again, is AI going to replace the role of market research?
This is a really good question. Yes.
Yeah, AI may replace marketing research, but there's still got to be a human intervention, because one is AI is capturing and collecting data and at the same time giving things out, but there's got to be an element of audit through researching that needs to be done to ensure that these things are done. And I'll just see the last one here. I'd like to ask, better to conduct research than to present a client with a complete research, or keep in touch with the client every step. I think the important thing is this: when your client is actually carrying out the research, you don't want to just appoint a research company and then at the end of the day get their report. I think it's got to be a continuum, because you want to get your money's worth. And I can tell you this much: as a consultant, I kept going back to the actual organization at least every 3 or 4 weeks to tell them what I have done. Because you know why? The problem is this: if you don't go back to the organization regularly and update them, and you give them the final report, they do not have the time to read the whole report. And all you're going to do is synthesize your aspects of the whole research. And I think that is not very fair for the actual organization, doing sort of contracting you or appointing you as the researcher. All right. Now, sorry, I don't want to take too much of your time. Is there any parting things that you would like to ask Dr. Majda?
I'm trying to find. Yes. Yeah, Prof. Sifa, I think we are done with the question. I think we have just 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
I would like to take this opportunity first of all to thank you. And I would like to tell the audience that you have huge experience in terms of research field anyway, with the student and industry. And I am sure that in the future we will do another webinar. We're focusing more in a student demand in marketing research, and maybe another one about business industry.
That's right. Why not?
I knew that you have coordinated like more than 30 PhD students, yes. And they are like some of them from the Middle East, especially right. from Saudi Arabia. And just can you give us your background and how you observe Saudi Arabia, especially out of these researches? Like, for example, you had me, and you have by the time then Noura and other students. Right. And what is your perspective of the country, and how do you see the country moving forward based on the topic that we have worked with you on them?
Exactly. That's right. I must say that I'm very proud of my doctoral students that I've actually supervised to completion. I think, Dr. Majda is a case in point, how well they have actually learned the tools from here and actually been able to. And again, what really impresses me about, the students, and again, for one case in point, Dr. Majda, and I've also got other students in the region, is how well they have embraced, the language in terms of English and be able to communicate, and also be able to go there and use what they have studied in their doctoral study in terms of their application. And I think this is what that gives me satisfaction. I mean, and the important thing in any form of, why am I doing this webinar? I'm doing this webinar to share knowledge, to share information. And I think the more you share, the more you give, someone up there will give you whatever, needs to be done. And you must do it without any expectations. And that is what I've seen in every one of my students, in terms of how they've been there, like my family, in terms of wanting to learn, and I was there to help them in whatever way I could. And I think, the doctoral journey is not an easy journey. There are lots of things to be done in the doctorate. But what I'm impressed is how determined and how hardworking all these students who from the Saudi region have come, who I've supervised, and also balancing family, doing their PhD, and at the same time, it's not easy sometimes, like, in how in a Western society, how you still maintain and adhere to your actual beliefs and your religious elements. And I think they've done a fantastic job. And also, these are things which I'm very proud of. And I want to finally thank the organization here for giving me this opportunity to come on this webinar. And again, I want to thank all the participants who have been there asking me these wonderful questions. And if I can be of any help, please feel free to contact me. And I'm sure you all will know my contact details. And all I can say is thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Prof. Seifa. Thank you. It's my honor to have you here. Thank you for your attendance, and thank you for your valuable information out of your valuable experience. I am sure most of the attendees had opened their eyes to a new area of marketing research. And I encourage them strongly to attend other of your conferences and follow your research paper.
Just to let them know, it is actually right now the webinar started here at 5 a.m. in the morning. So I just want to wish you all good night, and I'll tell myself good morning.
Thank you, Prof. Seifa. Thank you very much for your time.
Have a very good Ramadan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Seifa.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.